Hey folks, Zach Cross here. Here's Rachel. We both look obviously pretty distraught. I know, babe, but we gotta show them we're distraught because this is an important situation and this might go on to help other people, including your dad. So, many of you might not know this based on my not liking homeless drug addicts vandalizing, breaking in, and harming things and me filming them. But I've actually done quite a bit of advocate work, both in personal life of ours and also in my earlier years post-recovery out here with strangers and stuff. So it's not like I don't have a heart. It's just I don't want my neighborhood crime-ridden and problems. And, we understand personally that this is a difficult situation. I come from a family of drug addicts, not all of them, but enough of them that we've experienced this kind of instability, as many of you are with drug family members and stuff. I'm personally an addict, recovered February 12th, 2007 was my last date of use for methamphetamine. I never thought I'd make it a day. Now, we've been dealing with the problem for a while now. During the pandemic, Rachel's dad basically had a little bit of a meltdown from the isolation. He went over here to Rideout Memorial Hospital before Adventist took over, and he told him he was thinking negative thoughts and thoughts of suicide, and he was scared. He didn't know what that meant. He didn't know to go on and say he was depressed so he could get treatment or whatever that way without more of a, let's say, an accelerated or escalated situation where they would pin a 5150 on him. It's important to remember he knows at this point now in his life, based on that experience, what to say and how to get around that sort of evaluation, as many of them on the street do, just like many garbage parents know if they keep a bare minimum of food in the cupboards and fridge, CPS won't do anything about them. So, let's continue on. During the pandemic, roughly about 3.5 years ago, right before the UREZ would change hands and kick a lot of senior citizens and disabled veterans out from what was an affordable rent to charging $1,200 a month through homeless programs for rent. Right during the pandemic, they couldn't kick anyone out legally, so it was right before that part. I had gotten Jack a room there roughly 4 years ago, 3.5, something to that effect. So anyway, about 3 years ago rolls around, and he suffers a little bit less probably, and he suffers where he goes to the hospital because of the pandemic isolationism, says he's thinking about harming himself. They take him over to Sutter Yuba Mental Health, and then they take him down somewhere in the Bay Area near Santa Rosa to a mental health facility. They keep him there for about, I think, 30 days the first time. He doesn't realize that his daughter, who loves him very much, and myself, who, I never had a problem with him in all the years. Him and I had a pretty good working son-in-law, father type relationship. I normally get along with the fathers, not so much the mothers at times. So, historically. So anyway, back to Jack. So, he then comes back, unaware we were paying his rent at the UREZ during his absence, not knowing what's going on because HIPAA, we couldn't find out anything. Marysville PD picks him up again in front of Salvation Army. I'm thinking he's homeless. I guess they dropped him off up here and he never went home to check his stuff. All of his stuff was disappearing, keys, wallet, everything. So Marysville PD evaluates him, picks him up again. I believe this is when he really learned how to basically fool the evaluation test, to be honest, looking at what happened today. They take him down there for another 30 days. At this point, I'm using all my connections to have eyes and ears out for him. And my friend who was managing the UREZ at the time happened to know somebody at the mission who called her, who also knew Jack. And they let me know that he had been released to the mission roughly 60 days after the initial event. Now, in hindsight, we had never dealt with this before. But after he was released, the eviction process started on him and many other senior citizens, with an $1,100 a month retirement check from Social Security and no real retirement because that generation lost everything in the '07 crash, just getting ready to retire. So like him and many other that were in that facility and these other boarding houses at the time, which have now become overpriced rent for a bedroom, basically sharing a few bathrooms around, between 20 or 30 people. So anyway, it comes time where the new owners start evicting people from yours. I'm ready to fight it. Ex-Supervisor Leahy tells me him and the city of Marysville and some other officials have it handled, and if I could back off, it would be a great deal. I guess they did nothing as usual. But in the meantime, Jack had told me that if he did not get to move in with his daughter, he was probably going to kill himself. So, basically, we changed our whole lives and we moved to Brownsville, to a neighborhood where we could afford a 2-bedroom, with some nice area that we were in from very nice Mr. Bamford. Some of you might disagree with that, but to me, I think for everything, he was a pretty nice guy. He gave my family that was struggling at the time, with taking on a father-in-law, a place to live. And we lived with Jack for 2 years. Now, Jack refused to continue his treatment after he was left out. He basically refused any kind of treatment. I didn't even want him to take pills. Most of you know I'm a cannabis activist. I'm not going to push pharmaceuticals in your body, your choice. However, it was clear he wasn't getting better and he wasn't getting treatment, both for medical conditions and also for his mental health. It was, basically coming from him being a 70-ish-year-old man. So after 2 years, we kind of realized we were enabling things, and he was much better. He didn't seem suicidal. If anything, he seemed to be on the other side of mania, which we don't know. Maybe he's bipolar, maybe it's something else. If he got diagnosed at these facilities, we couldn't get it out of him what had happened. Really, he wouldn't say a word. So, anyway, we had found him a few options to live. This showing he has a poor mental health capacity to make good judgment in itself should kind of tell you where this went after this. So instead of choosing a few different people that were strangers, where he could have either had his choice of a regular bedroom, sharing the rest of the house, or even a master, he chose to move in with somebody who is known to not only have kicked him out, causing his homelessness a few times over his, before I got him into the Urez, basically, but also other people, and has court cases on file showing that they're basically a shady landlord that doesn't run on contracts and tries to do illegal evictions. So at this point, he chooses to go that route instead of a few other things Rachel had tirelessly worked on, trying to find him places he could afford and live. Myself, I always try to back away from somebody else's family. I've got my own family to deal with. As Dr. Bill says, there's no reason to mix that up. Let people deal with their crazy sisters as he does, and let his wife deal with her crazy sisters. There's no reason to mix that up. But when I'm asked to help by Rachel, or even her other family members, often I do. So, fast forward, the inevitable illegal eviction process start. We call Adult Protective Services to try to stave it off while we find him another place. He's pretty much refusing to go any other place. In his head, he feels that if they want to run a credit check, which his credit at this point, before moving out with us, was pretty good, and he was flush with probably about 10 grand in cash from saving up from me charging him hardly anything, not even the cost of what it was for him to live there, as I was busy working. Hopefully this stuff would sort itself out. So anyway, he ends up getting evicted. He ends up moving to somebody else. At this point, he's so unstable and hypomanic in my non-psychology field opinion, and he'll last one day at the new place before he's illegally evicted there out of Sun City, Lincoln Hills. He then wanders around Roseville, getting into fights with other homeless, altercations with people at gyms, hotels, all kinds of stuff, until he finally goes to fight some guy who I guess was picking on him, another homeless, I think a drug addict pimp, based on his description of a few things. I've been out of that game, the street shit, for a long time. So I'm, old people used to be out doing dumb shit mentality. I think that's the situation he entered. He ends up getting in an altercation with him, bashing him in the head with a lock, where I guess the guy's pretty effed up. And Roseville PD then gets called to that after several other incidences over the course of about 45-day to 60-day period of time, where he basically was starting stuff at businesses and other altercations. The guy doesn't want to press charges. He beat with the lock. He's got a warrant. Probably was going to hurt him real bad later, in revenge for hitting him in the head with the lock, if I had to guess. I don't know. Maybe things are different on the streets now than 20 years ago almost. Roseville PD puts him on a plane to Philadelphia, where he has other family and where he grew up. There's some sort of altercation on the Delta Airlines plane, and he gets taken off by air marshals and permanently banned from Delta in Salt Lake City, a layover. Now, Jack is a very resourceful guy. He grew up in the projects of Philadelphia, and he's not a bad guy. Many of you have met him. He's been using my name to kind of get around town and get help and stuff as he could. We tried to help him. We have. We figured out we were just enabling him, and I put up with it for a long time as a son-in-law, and I did it because Jack is a good guy. So then he ends up doing a combination of walking back and figuring out that if he lays down on the frontage area on the freeway, the right-of-ways, people will call the cops worrying about him, and he actually gets other cops to bring him back to California in that process. Now, look, when he gets back here, he is totally unstable, and he tries to deny the entirety of the situation, how screwed up all of this is, and even lie to us. And breaks Rachel's heart. I am still trying to stay out of this. Then we start hearing crazy stories about, altercation he's getting in with other homeless. At this point, when he came back from Salt Lake, I think he was only missing one tooth. He paid a lot of money to go get his teeth fixed a few years ago. Since he's been back here, he's lost about 2 more teeth getting in altercations with these homeless out here in the streets of Marysville and Yuba City. He basically has also been vandalizing local businesses, including Marysville McDonald's, where he had a dispute over a receipt survey, prize food of some sort, and goes and breaks the lock off the breaker box and shuts them off during a lunch rush, the entire panel. On top of that, there's another situation that occurs where he's basically out, and he's same thing at Popeyes, except he has come proud to report to Rachel and myself, which I can't tell you how ecstatically worried Rachel was about this continued behavior, where he broke a camera off at Popeyes and stole all their sprinklers in revenge over not getting his preferred prize instead of what they were willing to give him. He then gets into an altercation with some tweaker named Anthony James, who I guess has robbed the local mortuary here in Marysville, robbed a few people who we really care about in the community, who do a lot of volunteering and good work and are non-political at all. And this lady is so nice that I can't believe anybody would rob her, and many of you wouldn't be able to. But this guy seems to be a real scumbag, and we had heard the name before around town as one of the bad homeless. I guess he dumpster dives at Denny's a lot. Anyway, I don't know if the altercation that they had ended up in him losing a tooth, but Mr. James allegedly stole Jack's Social Security ATM card and a bunch of his other stuff and beat him up pretty good. So Jack comes over here at this point, and he shows me this lame knife that's, for any of you who have needed to use a knife for hunting or something like that, you don't use the knives with the cheap little piece of metal, quick open knives. It's basically going to fold up in your hand and cut you because that weak piece of metal doesn't hold it when you're trying to cut through tendon or whatever, He tells us he's going to stab this Anthony James guy with it, and Rachel, scared shitless at this point, and had an incident where I had to come home from Casa Carlos after kind of a political meeting a little sooner, because based on her text I could tell something was wrong besides her dad being here. And it reached a point where Jack basically had scared her enough that she didn't feel comfortable being around her own father because he's so unstable. Now, keep in mind, since before he even landed in Salt Lake City, shall we say, there was an incident where he was already threatening me in one of these delusional states where he threatened to stab me. Well, I called the cops because the first thing I'm going to do is, if you want to try to do something violent against me, is I'm going to create a record of it in case something crazy happens, and I have to basically have some sort of defense case because I've been in the legal system when I was young and doing stupid stuff, and I know how crazy the legal system is now, that if you often defend yourself without enough of a record, or same reason I record them with this phone, you're generating a record in case these mentally unstable people attack you. You're not the one in trouble while they're out running around creating more havoc, here on the streets, because that's the way it is in California these days. So we've been documenting things with Adult Protective Services, Yuba County, this entire time. And basically they told us to call the cops and have them take him in for a psychological evaluation by a professional. So when Mr. James calls, basically this incident where Jack threatens to stab Mr. James in front of me and his daughter the other day, we do a little discussion. And finally, we make the decision that we've got to call him about an hour and a half after he left here, maybe an hour and 45 minutes. I thought it was a shorter time. You know how when you're talking about traumatic and dramatic stuff, time seems to fly, especially when you're trying to figure out the best solution to keep everybody safe. So we had been documenting things with Adult Protective Services. We even had the officer's name who mainly handled Jack's situation in Roseville, and everything ready to go. Now the officer showed up, and they took our report that he was going to threaten to stab Mr. James. They allegedly put out an APB. I guess Officer Carroll did, according to his underlings. And somebody must have picked him up in Yuba City or something and basically released him as clear or something like that without him knowing, according to what I just learned out front. So after filing that report, us not knowing, what has transpired after that report, Monday we call Adult Protective Services, and I actually talked to an intake specialist who, takes it down. And first they had to call to see if they could even help him, because that's the social worker side, and they thought maybe it was on the fence of a criminal thing and they wouldn't be able to help. I have very limited experience with Adult Protective Services, but sometimes when I was helping manage their areas 15 years ago, or closer to 20, about the time of recovery started, to be honest, and property management, very limited interactions where people had deteriorated. So I don't know these processes like I can tell some of you as an advocate. I've been for you. This other stuff, this is brand new experience for me, pretty much, because they were bad enough and the laws were different in the old days. Katie, go lay down, honey. So basically, I don't know what I'm doing, but what I can tell you is he showed up today, and this was after Rachel had asked him not to come over. She's not feeling well. She actually suffered a heat stroke at the Peach Festival, last weekend, and she's recovering from that. And this was another sign that Jack wasn't okay. When he was over here the other day, he wasn't even nurturing or caring that his daughter had passed out and experienced this, ailment of heat stroke as his only daughter and the only child between her two parents. I don't know how many of you are only children or know only children dynamic, but the whole kid and the parent thing, that's kind of like a locked situation, because they don't have backups, and basically that dynamic in itself. So that was like a red flag. So anyway, Rachel asked him, please don't come by today, but my mom has some mail for you. He obviously gets the text because he goes out to Rachel's mother house to collect his mail that was there. I go to walk Katie probably about a half an hour, 45 minutes ago, and she starts going off barking. Now, she's a good smeller. She's a quarter border collie, and she's just a pure mutt and quite an amazing dog. And if she would have smelled Jack or picked up on his scent any other time, most of the time she'd be wagging her tail and doing a happy bark. Instead, basically, there was something that took place where she was doing her ferocious back the fuck off bark. Excuse my language. So I open the gate. I'm already pretty sure it's Jack. And he showed up with a shopping cart, looks distraught. And I go, "Hey, Jack, what are you doing? Didn't you get your daughter's text, when she was telling you to go get your mail? That, not to come by today? Rachel's upstairs sleeping," which was true. He then tells me, the streets are dangerous and I should always keep my knife on me because I might not know when I have to defend myself. Now, look, folks, I'm a farm boy who worked construction and used to bounce at bars. I might only be about 5'9.5" with the stenosis shrinking me roughly 1.5 inches from the time I was in high school. But I'm 300 pounds. And only about 100 pounds of that is, maybe 70 pounds of that's fat. The rest of it's muscle when I lose that, as one of these people who bulked up for both construction and other stuff. It's pure muscle. I don't like to get violent, but I have no problem defending myself. And I've thrown people around like rag dolls as a bouncer and in self-defense before. So, just like when the little homeless lady who I thought was a man who grabbed their sack on some other when homeless attack videos on this channel, I could have easily dealt with this in a very physical, unfair way. And I choose not to because I understand violence is not, the first go-to, basically. And it's not right because of my stepfather and what I had lived with through that and watching him do stupid shit, getting in trouble for always being a hothead, among other things. So Jack is probably 5'6" and like 140 pounds soaking wet. He put on weight when he came with us. He was less than that before, and he's a lot more muscle now after his journey walking back from Utah, to say the least. Instead, basically I call 911. This is after talking to an Adult Protective Services intake person instead of the receptionist that kind of advises you a little bit before it's an actual case. They told me to have the police take him in for an actual evaluation by a professional. I have told this to them. I guess Officer Carroll on duty tonight did a on-site evaluation for him, and he came back clear. Now, I would imagine, even with Carroll's long-term time on the force, when Adult Protective Services intake specialist, which I told him we had been in contact with him the entire time, and I also told him tonight we had contacted him Monday and actually spoke to an intake specialist, and they also have Officer Cantley of Roseville PD's number who can tell them more about what happened down there. They tell us there's nothing they can do, that I would have to get a restraining order. Well, I'll tell you, folks, ideally, he just needs to get treatment. Do you think that there needs to be a restraining order? There's also a new homeless court system that's in play where officers of the law and homeless housing authority specialists are supposed to be able to put somebody who's been long-term homeless, either mentally ill or criminally, into this court system and help them get structures. I guess they might not know about that, but they're telling us basically there's nothing that you can do. So if you see about a 5'6" man with whiting hair where it used to be reddish blonde, named Jack, missing a few front teeth at this point, I think 2 or 3, be nice to him, please, but also be very cautious. We love Jack very much. Rachel loves him very much. We don't want to do this, and I've been wanting to make one of these videos for a while, basically because I cannot believe how hard it is to get one of these homeless people out here help, even when the family's trying. When you try to take them in for yourself, you can't force them to do that. Many of you probably experienced this, but at this point, he's vandalizing businesses that don't give him what he wants. He's doing bodily harm to other homeless, getting bodily harm, physically verifiable, missing teeth, and other stuff done to him. And every branch, whether mental health or law enforcement, they tell us there's nothing to do. He's permanently banned from Roseville. If Roseville PD catches him down there, they're going to arrest him on the spot and charge him with everything he did down there. So I don't know why Roseville PD And this Officer Cantley would be willing to do this stuff, but they can't. When I told them about McDonald's, they said, oh, those are prior calls. We can't do anything about that. This is all within a 60-day period of time. He has only been back for 2 days since before Father's Day, folks. This is all in a very short period of time. They can't collaborate all this, or just simply do what Adult Protective Service advised. Call them up and see what they should do is following up. Look, we care for Jack, but if he hurts one of you, I'm sorry. We've done everything we physically can do to try to prevent that situation. And I can honestly see why these homeless people out here who are mentally ill often end up hurting people. You know, it's because the system is lacking. I don't know if it's laziness. I don't know. I spoke to a lawyer and was told conservatorship and possibly a lawsuit against Marysville PD for not willing to help and do what Adult Protective Services suggested is the way to go. You know, conservatorship's expensive. Who's gonna do that? I mean, he has a sister willing to help him, but all he needs to do is probably get on some medication and some counseling. He's got lifelong trauma that he never, ever dealt with, like a lot of people you know and love out there. Without recovery, without me getting in trouble in February 12th of 2007, I never would have dealt with long-term trauma and events of, you know, kind of a not-so-perfect childhood, we'll say, in a nice way, so I don't, you know, basically, you know, look, man, there's a lot of people out there who just need treatment, and Jack just needs structured treatment. I'm sorry if he hurts you guys. We've done everything. Rachel has been patient, you know, like a saint. I've been very patient, especially for me. I just went to work and, you know, did whatever I could and basically paid to enable this situation longer. And we tried, you know, we weren't trying to enable him, but it reached a point basically that last year where, you know, he was obviously getting better from the state that he came to us in, and he was still unwilling to get either medical care or mental health. I just wanted him to... Anyway, folks, we've tried everything. If he hurts one of you, I don't know what to tell you. He seems to be in a delusional state where he isn't thinking clear. I don't know if it's sleep deprivation. I don't know if it's the trauma he's experienced. Obviously, he's experienced head trauma. He's very nice. If you're nice to him, he'll probably be nice back, but he's unstable and can snap at any minute, and we've been witnessing this get more and more perpetually in a bad situation. He's going to end up out there either being killed or killing somebody and doing 20 to life. And I hope it's not one of you, but no, we've contacted Yuba County Adult Protective Services and Marysville PD countless times, and for whatever reason, you know, nothing's happening. And please be kind to him, but please be careful. Please be careful. And I don't know how many others in this same situation out there that are mentally unstable, ready to snap at any minute, are ready to basically hurt you guys. But I can tell you, at least one good thing came out of my drug past. I'm always watching out and alert of my surroundings because of living in that crazy crime world, you know, before I found recovery and got better. You guys need to bring your guards up, because if the Marysville PD, you know, and all of this other stuff that's supposed to be here, we pay taxes to protect us. I guess the only thing we get protection from that we pay taxes for anymore is fire, and that's if the supervisors aren't stealing it to give themselves raises like Sutter County did. God bless you. Please pray for us. Please pray for Rachel. You know, she's going through a heat stroke. She don't need the shit. She don't need the shit anyway, as somebody who sacrificed to herself as a daughter, you know, just so she could know she tried everything to help her dad. Pray for her. Pray for Jack. God bless. I don't know what to tell you. I hope he doesn't hurt himself or anybody out there.